As a student, what is the saddest thing you have found out about your teacher? In 7th grade, I had a history teacher named Mr. Andrews. He was famous throughout the school for how hard his class was. Mr. Andrews didn't mess around. He expected his students to do the work he assigned, no shortcuts. And he assigned a lot of work. Even though his class was tough, Mr. Andrews was a great teacher. He went above and beyond what the required course material was and gave really long, yet animated lectures, making the weirdest things interesting without losing our attention. He knew his stuff, which is something rare for public middle school teachers. History was genuinely his passion and he wanted to share that with us. Every Friday he'd bring out his guitar and sing traditional folk songs for us. The whole class would sing along, and it was a relief from the stress of all our other classes once a week. Still, his policy of assigning huge amounts of homework made him somewhat unpopular. Most students had mixed feelings about his class, myself included. One day, totally out of the blue, we took a break from our usual lesson plan. This was nearing the end of the year. Our middle school's guidance counselor was in the room, looking somber. As the bell to signal the start of class rang, she began to tell us how kind it is of Mr. Andrews to do this every year, and that we should be very respectful. She stepped aside and let Mr. Andrews begin to talk. A picture of 3 young adults was on the screen in front of class. Mr. Andrews told us those were his 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. He told us stories about his children when they were growing up, and how his son loved breakdancing. We were all confused at this point, but we knew that this was serious, so we listened attentively. He fast-forwarded to the future. His eldest daughter was getting married. One Wednesday, he got a call from his daughter, very seriously, telling him to come home. He thought there might have been a slight hitch in the wedding planning, so he wasn't too concerned. But when he arrived home, he saw a bunch of police cars outside. Mr. Andrews went into his home and told us the last thing he could consciously remember was an officer telling him, "Mr. Andrews? We found your son inside his home deceased from what appears to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His son took his own life." Mr. Andrews said he didn't notice any warning signs. A week before he passed, he told his father he wanted to go to college to become a history teacher. Following his passing, it came out that he had a fiancée that no one knew about, but it was a complete shock to her too. The entire time Mr. Andrews told his son's story, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move or make a sound. I could hear the emotion in my teacher's voice. I could tell which parts were the hardest for him to get to, when his voice broke and he took long pauses before continuing. I could hear which parts would be ingrained in his mind forever. The story was so painful for him to relay, but he still told his students every year because he wanted us to know the effects that self-harm has on a family and a community. He wanted us to know that we can, and must, ask for help. I will always remember his story. From that day forward, I had nothing but complete respect for Mr. Andrews.